Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unpack a deeply philosophical and honestly highly provocative manifesto written by Zhu Feng. It's titled Cultivating the Soul Garden for a Civilized World. We spend so much time talking about how to fix our world from the outside in, right? We're always debating policies, economics, and borders. But the text we're looking at today flips that entire concept on its head. It argues that our external world is literally just a reflection of our internal state.
It all starts with a really foundational question. What is the true cornerstone of a civilized society? According to Xu Feng, if humanity genuinely wants to enter a truly civilized era, relying on tangible, visible elements just isn't going to cut it. We're talking about things like systems of governance, power structures, wealth distribution, laws, and even charity. The author argues that focusing on these visible systems is kind of like treating the symptoms of a disease rather than the root cause itself. The true cornerstone isn't out there in the world. It's a completely unseen internal factor. And that brings us right to Section 1, the core premise of his entire philosophical framework, the soul garden.
So, the crucial point is, what exactly is a soul garden? Well, essentially, it's a person's consciousness and values which function as the unseen driver of absolutely all human actions. The manifesto asserts that every single visible phenomenon we see in our society is dictated entirely by these invisible thoughts. Think of it as the soil where the seeds of all your behaviors are planted.
Let's move to and see how this builds into two very different realities. On one side, you have the cultivated garden. This is a consciousness filled with beautiful thoughts and pure values. But on the flip side, you have the neglected garden. According to the text, this is a mind utterly consumed by ego, constant comparison, the worship of money and power, envy, and greed. The author states that when a person's inner world is neglected like this, they inevitably bring harm, not just to themselves, mind you, but to everyone around them and to society as a whole.
Moving on to our next section, let's look at the cost of neglect. What actually happens when we ignore these inner gardens? Well, the text unleashes a heavy list of societal weeds choking our world. We see it in the corruption and tyranny among officials, intellectuals distorting the truth, and merchants pushing counterfeit goods. From rampant corporate fraud to widespread violence, theft, drug abuse, and gambling. The author argues this overwhelming wave of chaos is the direct, unavoidable result of failing to tend to our collective inner gardens. And because of this deep-rooted mistrust, the everyday running costs of society absolutely skyrocket. Bureaucracy, commerce, and even our familial and romantic relationships are basically reduced to tools for personal gain. They turn into battlegrounds or gambling dens. The powerful fear annihilation, the wealthy fear kidnapping, and everyday interactions become just riddled with conflict and selfishness. Which leads us to a very natural and pretty pressing question. Why don't our human systems fix this chaos? We've built massive, complex human institutions designed exactly to maintain order and protect us from this kind of breakdown. So why are they failing us? That brings us to Section 3. The futility of human systems. The source text offers a rather harsh critique of the three main pillars of modern civilization. And this brilliantly illustrates just how aggressively Xu Feng breaks down these institutions. First up, nations. What have they actually contributed besides war, plunder, and borders? The text points to mentalities like America First that lead to ruthless competition and nuclear blackmail, where the strong simply dominate the weak. Next, religion. Instead of bringing peace, the author argues that millennia of rigid dogma have basically created numb souls unable to experience true joy. And finally, laws. Despite having countless statutes covering every conceivable issue, the text claims they have utterly failed to prevent war, guarantee freedom, or actually reduce crime rates. Let's shift gears to Section 4, Rethinking Laws and Borders. The author takes this philosophical critique and applies it directly to a highly charged modern issue, illegal immigration. To do this, Zhu Feng first redefines the concept of legality altogether. He writes that true law is any approach that enables people to live happily, freely, and joyfully. It's pretty straightforward for him. If a rule hinders that joy or freedom, the manifesto argues it simply cannot be called a true law. It restricts rather than liberates. Building on that definition, the author shifts our perspective to a planetary scale. The text asserts that Earth is nothing more than a small village within the vast cosmos. And within a true natural legal framework, the inhabitants of this tiny cosmic village should have the absolute natural right to migrate freely within it. No lines drawn in the sand. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the radical thought experiment it sparks. Are we all illegal immigrants? The author argues that if illegal immigration is deemed a crime today, then every single human being is fundamentally guilty. Why? Because when the Earth was initially formed, it had no inhabitants. We're all essentially migrants from somewhere else in the cosmos who simply settled here. The text then applies this logic directly to the United States, following the author's exact progression here. 1. Earth initially had no inhabitants, meaning all early humans inherently had to migrate. 2. Because the United States is a stronghold built entirely by the contributions of early immigrants, aside from its indigenous peoples, the text concludes that restricting migration now and calling newer migrants illegal when previous migration was deemed perfectly justified is fundamentally hypocritical. This leads to the text's most controversial proposal, presented as a pure thought experiment. The author asks, why not allow unrestricted migration so that everyone on Earth can immigrate to the US? The idea posed is to transform the entire planet into a single united entity. The source challenges us to consider, historically speaking, how many places that strictly restrict outsiders have actually managed to become truly civilized, prosperous, or strong. Moving into our final section, a call for inner purification. After this massive systemic and political critique, we're transitioning right back to the personal, internal solution that started this whole thing. Because, you see, this isn't just a high-level theory. There is a deeply personal toll here. The manifesto asks entrepreneurs directly, where does your energy actually go? It's consumed by managing interpersonal friction and mistrust, isn't it? We suffer lost sleep, constant anxiety, and pain from oppression and deception. The author argues that our greatest personal and business troubles stem directly from the neglected soul gardens of the people around us. If everyone's inner garden was pure, things like toxic food, blackmail, and fraud wouldn't even exist. To escape this cycle, the manifesto issues an absolutely urgent call to action. History must be critically examined, realities scrutinized, and authority openly questioned. Without a willingness to deeply reflect and question these massive established systems, the text warrants that our path forward as a species is only going to grow narrower and steeper. We have to do the work. And so, we arrive at the ultimate resolution posited by the text. It isn't a new law, it isn't a new border policy, or some new nation. The ultimate solution is a collective purification of humanity's soul. It's presented as the single best and perhaps only path to a truly civilized world, where the weather is harmonious, peace prevails, and everyone actually enjoys a beautiful life. Which leaves us with this final thought to consider. We've looked at global systems, cosmic villages, and the mechanics of human society. But according to this text, it all starts with the invisible thoughts inside your own head. So how are you cultivating your own soul garden today? What seeds are you watering, and what weeds are you pulling? Thank you for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this deep dive has given you plenty to reflect on.